Erin Hardick, our lead analyst. Erin, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Chris. I couldn't help myself from dancing to that playlist.
I think that's a great thing to do to kick off a Thursday morning. So, what's going on today? This is day two. What should our wonderful audience know about our program coming up?
We have some really exciting sessions today. We're going to kick off the day talking about, again, solar and storage, and then transition into maybe some talk about microgrids, and then close out the day with some sessions around innovation. So a lot of exciting stuff today.
That is exciting, and we're really grateful that all of you are here today. We're very grateful. None of this happens without you wanting to be here, wanting to ask questions, wanting to learn more. It also doesn't happen without our wonderful sponsors and our speakers. So thank you to all of those sponsors and speakers for making this first Solar Storage Fest so impactful. Yesterday, big round of applause to our... Thank you. Speaking over an applause line, that's a bad trait. But yesterday, we talked a lot about the drivers of where the solar industry has come, where the storage industry is going, and how those two are becoming more integrated and interconnected. And obviously, for such a long time, the customers really drove the move towards increased solar penetration in the country and throughout the world. Utilities have now caught up and onto that, more power purchase agreements. But we saw that there might be a little bit of a slowdown. Storage can help smooth those waters, and that integration and that growth in storage that's projected over the next decade is going to have a profound and massive impact on the electricity and energy industry. It's not going to solve all the problems. I've had some really great conversations. We still need base load generation for many, many years to come. But this interconnection and this integration between solar and storage really is part of a transformation that's occurring in the energy industry. And to really talk about that power of solar, we're really excited for our opening keynote. And Erin would love to introduce Scott this morning.
Yeah, so our opening keynote is going to be talking about how solar can really transform our society, similar to the way fire did way back when. So our opening keynote is Scott Wynn, CEO of 17 Terawatts, speaking about Is Solar the New Fire? So please join us in welcoming Scott.
So good morning, everybody. How's everyone feeling this morning? All right. So I want to start off today with a story, a personal story. And so in 1996, I traveled back to Vietnam for the very first time. I had escaped by boat as a toddler. And for a kid who grew up on Honey Nut Cheerios and Houston Oilers football, that entire trip was an eye-opening experience. But there was really one incident, or one that really stood out in particular. And so my aunt and my grandmother, they lived on the outskirts of Can Tho, which is a large metropolitan city on the Mekong Delta. And every morning, my aunt, she'd hop on her scooter, and she'd ride out to the farmer's market. And she'd buy some of the freshest of ingredients. I mean, I can still smell the fresh basil, the fresh cilantro. But one morning I woke up and things were a little bit different. It was monsoon season and it had rained heavily that night, and the rains had washed out all the dirt roads. And so no one could actually make it to the market that morning. And so without breakfast, I did the best thing that I could think of, which was lie back down, close my eyes, and go back to sleep. But it kept on raining and raining all day long. And so by dinner time, I was starving. And then my two cousins, age about 10 and 12 at the time, they ran out into the yard, and within half an hour, they came back with 2 buckets full of frogs. Frogs about half the size of your hand. Now, I can't say I enjoyed dinner so much that night. Can't say that I took more than a couple of bites. But the reason I remember this day so well, and the reason why I bring it up here today, is because there was one simple reason we were in such a predicament. My grandmother's house didn't have electricity, which meant it didn't have a refrigerator and all those conveniences that come with one. So what I had come to love about those daily trips to the market, the freshness of those ingredients, well, that wasn't done out of personal preference. It wasn't done out of a local foodie movement. It was actually done out of necessity. And so that day, I learned a very important lesson. Energy is vital. From powering the refrigerator that we needed that day to now powering all the smartphones in the world, it's energy that powers the nightlight that comforts our kids to sleep. And it's energy which holds back the dark. Without it, there is no modern-day civilization. So if energy is so vital, how much do we actually think about it? So let me ask you guys a question. Think about your neighbor, a neighbor that's not part of the energy industry. So let's go by a show of hands. How often do you think that neighbor thinks about energy, really thinks about energy? Do you think once a day? Okay, how about once a month? Well, a 2016 study by Accenture found that Americans think about energy on average for only 8 minutes a year. That's right, 8 minutes a year. So if energy is so vital, how come we seem to take it for granted? Well, I believe the answer lies in human nature. And human nature is all about relationships. Relationships with the things that we use, the activities we do, and the people we engage with. With energy, our relationship is virtually non-existent. We've simply been consumers of what energy makes possible, with little to no awareness of the source of that original energy. And who can blame us? Our traditional energy infrastructure puts that original energy source far, far away. For example, oil and gas production can come from remote platforms operated hundreds of miles offshore. Electricity from coal or gas-fired power plants must travel for miles and miles on high-voltage transmission lines to eventually reach your home. But that was the traditional energy infrastructure. Today, given the urgency of climate change and a global population that's reaching 9 billion by 2050, we're in the midst of an energy transformation, and an energy transformation that is being led by solar. Over the past 2 years, there's been more solar power built than a total amount of coal, gas, and nuclear power plants combined. Now, some cynics might say, so what? It's another form of electricity. And even some supporters might say, yeah, solar's great. It's a clean source of electricity. But today, I'm taking it one step further. I am claiming that solar is a game changer. And the reason I make this claim is because solar has one key characteristic which makes it different from all the traditional energy sources. Solar puts energy production back in people's hands, back in their control, and that makes all the difference. So about 1 million years ago or so, our ancestors were at a similar turning point. They had somehow figured out how to create and control another form of energy, fire. And it was their control of fire, their direct relationship using it, that was a turning point in human evolution. It provided them a means to eat cooked meat, increasing their metabolic intake to fuel their hunts and grow their brains. It provided them warmth and allowed them to survive colder temperatures and expand across the globe. It gave them light and became a gathering spot that increased social interactions, and some say was the catalyst for the development of language. The key here is that our ancestors were able to create fire and use it how they wanted and when they wanted, to not only have a profound impact on their daily lives, but also on the course of human civilization. Solar can be our modern-day fire. Prices have dropped dramatically in the past 5 years, and people from all income levels are able to affordably install solar on their own homes. People are doing it here in Texas. They're doing it in New York. They're even doing it in Alaska. And for all these people, they're now able to produce their own power and consume their own power, giving them a direct relationship with energy and a sense of control that we've never had with our traditional energy infrastructure. And like fire, this sense of control appeals to our intrinsic desire for autonomy, our intrinsic desire for relationships. Case in point, you ever talk to someone who has solar on their home? I mean, these people love it. They talk about it every single day. They'll even check their monitoring app on their phones a few times every day. But you can't deny the fact that there is this magic emotional attachment that really comes with solar. And so much so that whenever you see a photo of a solar home, let's say on Facebook, for example, it's a photo of a family standing in front of that home, smiling, happy, and proud. No one ever posts photos of themselves standing in front of an oil and gas well or a coal-fired power plant. And the reason is because solar has so much more of a direct personal touch. And this direct, strong personal touch is what marketers really strive for with a consumer product. And make no mistake, solar is a consumer product. This is an extremely important point. Because solar is a consumer product, the rate of solar adoption is now governed by the social behavior of consumers with all their whims and all their irrational behaviors. Now, this fact might give you pause. You might be thinking, relying on people, especially those other people, that doesn't bode well. But you would be wrong. The consumerization of solar has actually been a big plus. There's a term in the industry which you're probably very familiar with called the neighborhood effect. It's based on research by Professor Varun Rai up at UT Austin and Professor Kenneth Gillingham up at Yale. And what they found was that if you lived in a neighborhood with a solar home, maybe you talked to that neighbor, maybe you simply drove by and saw those panels, well, you would be 5 times more likely to go solar than if you lived in a neighborhood without a solar home. What that implies is that solar is contagious and that it's not always about the financial return or the payback period or the ROI. Many times it's an emotional purchase. Sometimes it's about fulfilling that internal desire for that product, and sometimes it's about keeping up with the Joneses. But the implications of this are huge. For example, the rate of solar adoption between 2006 to 2016 exceeded the EIA's forecast, 2006 forecast, by 500%. That's right, they underestimated by 500%. Now that's the power of consumerization. Now our direct relationship with solar gives us another opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to build energy awareness. So let me take a step back, ask you guys another question. Think about that neighbor. How many of you think your neighbor has heard of the term kilowatt hour? Let's show of hands. Okay, how many of you think that neighbor actually understands what a kilowatt hour actually means? So where we are today with energy reminds me of the local foodie movement. 20 years ago or so, we didn't know where our foods came from. We didn't know what organic meant. We didn't think about industrial food lots. Hell, I still loved Happy Meals at that time. But as more information became available of how we produce our foods, we became more aware consumers. We started wanting better foods. We wanted those heirloom tomatoes, the pasture-raised eggs, the hyper-local farm-to-table restaurants. With solar, we can do the same with energy. By having our own systems, we start to understand what we produce and what we consume, and how we produce and consume that energy. Let's take my kids, for example. At my house, I've got this app on my phone that tells me in real time how much energy my solar system is producing and how much energy my home is consuming. And every once in a while, if you guys come over to my house, you'll find my kids running around the house with the phone open to this app. And what they're trying to do is use as little energy as possible. They'll turn off the lights, they'll turn off the AC, and once they say, "Hey, Dad, can I turn off the refrigerator?" So that gave me visions of Vietnam and those frogs. And I was like, no, kids, that's good enough. And so right now, we're only at the beginning of the energy transformation, and we're already seeing that solar can be so much more than a simple substitute to the old traditional power plant. Let's take, for example, Foundation Communities. It's an affordable housing nonprofit based in Austin. And what they realized was that affordable housing isn't just about the rent, but it's also about the fact that there are over 5 million Texans who currently have trouble paying their energy bills. These families spend up to 30% of their income on energy, compared with only 4% on average statewide. And so Foundation Communities said, hey, let's install solar on all our apartment complexes. This here is a photo of the Homestead Oaks affordable housing complex in Austin, built in 2016. 140 families live here. And solar is lowering the electricity bill of all 140 of them. allowing them to spend those additional savings on other household necessities, from school supplies to groceries to medicine. And not only that, imagine the relationship that is being cultivated between solar and those families, especially the children that are growing up there. Now, solar's reach doesn't just stop there. Many times when I think about how the energy landscape is changing, I think back to that day in Vietnam, a day in which we couldn't go to the market, the day in which frogs were served for dinner. That was over 23 years ago. Unfortunately, there are communities still today which face the same exact problem. 36 babies are born every single minute into a home without electricity. And given the high capital cost of building our old energy infrastructure, for many of these families and communities, a microgrid powered by solar is the best solution. Solar will be their first energy touch, and one that's going to have a profound and transformative impact on their lives. So as you can see, solar is so much more than electricity. But can it be like fire? Can it have the same impact on us as fire did for our ancestors? I say that it can. But I'm also going to say that it must. Solar really holds the key to solving one of the greatest challenges currently facing humanity. That's climate change. And to effectively combat climate change really requires scale. Yet despite all the positive things that we've been talking about with solar, only 1% of homes in the US currently have it. Therefore, to achieve the scale that we need in the time frame we need, we must leverage the power, we must leverage the deep relationships that comes inherent with solar. We need to be able to combine the power of consumerization with the virality of social networks to drive a growth in solar akin to how Facebook achieved 2 billion users in just 15 years. And we need to use the personal anecdotes and harness our collective energy awareness to overcome those abstract arguments that are currently facing climate change debates. So I'm going to leave you guys here with a call to action, especially all the decision makers in this room. What will you do to cultivate the bond between people and the energy that powers their lives? Thank you.